Hi, our group has chosen the book Methods for Development Work by Moilanen, and we will present its key concepts and main ideas. First, development work can be defined as continuous process of improvement and refining solutions to real-world problems. It is not something that happens once and ends, but rather is an ongoing cycle. This means that development work starts by identifying a problem and then testing possible solutions in practice. It's a process of trial, learning, and continuous improvement. What is important here is that development work is closely connected to research. It's not just about doing things, but about doing them in a systematic and informative way. Um, Research plays a key role by guiding decisions using data evidence instead of assumptions. At the same time, development work is not only analytical, it also requires creativity because solving real world problems often involve generating new and innovative ideas. Research ensures that solutions are reliable and effective as they are based on evidence rather than guesswork. Now, looking at the importance, especially for organizations, development work plays a key role in innovation and growth. Companies rely on it to create new products and services, improve processes, and adapt to market changes. In today's fast changing environment, organizations that do not continuously develop risks falling behind. In addition, development work helps organizations to respond to future challenges. It supports expansion into new markets, improves internal structures, and helps solve complex problems, contributing to long term competitiveness and sustainability. To carry out development work effectively, several competences are essential. These include data analysis, critical thinking, and problem solving. At the same time, creativity and collaboration are also key since development work often requires innovation and teamwork. One of the most important concepts here in the book is learning by developing. This approach suggests that learning is most effective when connected to real development projects. Instead of only studying theory, students and professionals engage in real tasks, collaborate, and apply research based thinking in practice. To conclude, development work is a crucial competence in modern business and research environments. It connects theory and practice, supports innovation, and enables meaningful and lasting improvements. Building on this understanding of development work, Chapter 2 focuses on research based development work. This concept is positioned as on a continuum between two extremes. On one end, there is scientific research, which is mainly theoretical and focused on generating knowledge. On the other hand, there is informal knowledge based on personal experience, which is not always systematic or critically evaluated. Research based development work lies between these two. It combines the rigor of research with the practical focus of solving real world problems. An important distinction is the difference in purpose. Scientific research aims to understand phenomena, while development work aims to create and implement solutions. Another key concept is research orientation, meaning that decisions should be based on data, evidence, and critical analysis rather than assumptions. This ensures that the development work is reliable and grounded in reality. The chapter also highlights that knowledge is created during the process in real environments, not separate from practice. This makes development work highly practical and context based. In addition, research based development work requires more than subject knowledge. It involves skills such as collaboration, innovation, and adaptability, especially when dealing with uncertainty and new challenges. The chapter then explains the process of development work, which is structured but also flexible. It consists of several stages that guide the project from beginning to end. The first stage is identifying the development target, which means clearly defining the problem or the opportunity. And this is a crucial step because a poorly defined problem can lead to ineffective solutions. The next stage is acquiring and analyzing data. After that, the development task must be clearly defined, including setting goals and criteria for evaluation. Then, a knowledge base is built by reviewing relevant theories and existing information. Next, an appropriate approach is selected, and the chapter presents several approaches. And after selecting the approach, different methods are applied. Another important stage is sharing results. This is not only done at the end of the project, but throughout the process. And finally, the development work is evaluated. Evaluation focuses on the effectiveness of the solution, the process used, and the overall impact. The chapter also highlights the importance of ethics. Development work must be conducted responsibly, honestly, and with the aim of producing useful outcomes for real world applications.
So I read chapter 3, which was approaches in developmental work, and it really stresses the need to be open when considering your approach to your research and not being really rigid with the process. The authors give some different tips. They say keep in mind what you're trying to achieve with your developmental work. They encourage you to blend elements from different methods and because there is no one single correct approach. They suggest thinking of an approach like a strategy, and then the methods are your tools. And what you're ultimately trying to do is create a toolkit to support your work. They want you to get creative to decide the best aspects of the approaches that you could use for your project and be really intentional with your explanation of why you chose that approach and which aspects you chose not to use. So, the discussed approaches in this chapter were case studies and action research, which are familiar from traditional scientific research. There was also constructive research, service design, innovation, production, foresight research, and network research. And I'm going to talk about a few that I thought are relevant for my thesis and the work that I want to do. Case studies, we all know, it's where you produce new knowledge and suggestions to support a development. You can choose a target based on the needs or the goals that you're set for your project. You can choose multiple targets to compare. Um, they say it's great to use theories and methods and studies because what you're trying to do when you're gaining an in-depth knowledge of these case studies is become familiar with the past. You're not necessarily trying to create a guide for the future. You start with a particular problem and you're trying to see um, how that target approached it and analyze it through their lens. So the relevance, I think, is really broad for people with their thesis, and for me, I think it's great because I'm looking at European schools that might already be in the public sector, such as one I found in Germany, whereas where I'd like to propose this school be based. So I know it already exists. There. And then there's also public school, international schools that use the European school curriculum. So I might have those be case studies that I look at. Service design, really the goal here is to optimize the service experience, whether that be on a functional way, economical, ecological, sustainable, or aesthetically pleasing aspect. So you want the product to become, or the service to become more popular. And this can be for companies or the private sector. You really focus on the users and have a multiple party participation, which means that for a school, it's various stakeholders as well. It's very user friendly and inclusive experience so that you're really getting genuine valuable information to use for the customers. Some of the different methods include building fictitious personas, whether that be like a visual description of their life and their needs. And you can also consider kind of like extreme or future personas. And I thought that this was really interesting for my thesis as well, because I could always have some future personas for candidates of families and students that would be interested in my school. So I could kind of describe their personas and see where that brings my research. Innovation production, just to refresh, innovation is renewal, economic growth, creativity, competitiveness, well-being. It improves a company's performance. It could be the same product in a new market or reorganizing the production process. It can be transformational or incremental. It can be service oriented, where you're investing in the staff, like a school would be, or it could be technological, where you're investing in research and design. They suggested you need really enthusiastic people to carry it out from the initial ideation to the actual prototypes and make it a reality. They said clash of ideas are better because you come up with fresher and more novel ideas. They suggest various methods that I would love to look into further, such as the 8x8 method, six thinking hats, remote thinking models, Osborne question list, body storming, excursion techniques, heuristic ideation techniques, and wish list techniques. So I could see this as being applicable to my school because the school already exists, but it's going into a new market, which is this Euro region. I thought it would also be great for like student and teacher well-being schemes, or perhaps AI research in education. And the last one that I wanted to talk about was just foresight research, which is looking at its future probing, planning, and anticipating events so that we don't take for granted what the future will look like. It's examining the future systematically, even if it's a far-reaching perspective, but you're creating like a foundation from which you can make long-term decisions and also outline strategic processes. So the goal is to find out what is possible and desirable and what should perhaps be avoided and what can be expected in the future through the business activity. Questions could be, like that you might have as you do foresight research could be, where can the necessary information be attained? What kind of qualitative and quantitative materials exist? You could combine several sources and methods. Methods include scenario building, expert surveys, future workshops, or future studios. And again, I thought this was really interesting for the CAP project that I wanted to do for Mark, which is designing a website of this future school in order to help me conduct a survey, but also collect data analytics from this website. And this website would be the future school, and I would get parents and stakeholders to experience the school through this website, and then look at the data and perhaps do a survey to see what they think. So it'd give like a more tangible way of conducting a survey, because they have an experience that's kind of future probing in front of them that they can look at.
Throughout Chapter 4, we looked at approaches in development work. Some of the key takeaways from this chapter from the very beginning were development work is a structured process that brings together several key elements. It is practical, focusing on real-world problems, theory-informed, based on academic knowledge, collaborative, involving stakeholders, ethical, ensuring responsible practice, and reflective, supporting continuous improvement. Together, these elements ensure development work leads to meaningful and sustainable improvements. To focus on one, we'll look at practical focus. Development work is mainly focused on real-world problems. It is not just theoretical knowledge, but aims to improve everyday practice and operations in organizations. The key idea is that development work should lead to practical solutions that can actually be applied and not just discussed in theory, but can be used on an everyday basis within organizations and companies. When looking at linking theory and practice, a key part of development work is the connection between theory and practice, and how theory helps us understand problems and provides a framework for solutions. However, theory alone is not enough. It must be applied in real situations to become meaningful and useful. So development work combines academic knowledge with real-world applications to create real-world solutions for real-world problems. Next, we're looking at stakeholder involvement and ethical considerations. When first looking at stakeholder involvement, it is an aspect that means including people affected by the development work, such as employees, customers, and managers, and can be seen as one of the most important aspects. When stakeholders are involved, outcomes are more realistic and relevant. It also improves communication and ensures solutions work in practice for the stakeholders in that organization. It improves transparency between all stakeholders so that organizations can run smoothly. Ethical considerations are very important in development work. These include confidentiality, consent, and transparency throughout, which links again to stakeholder involvement. Information must be handled responsibly, and people should understand how their input is used. Ethical practice builds trust and ensures professionalism. One key aspect is being able to evaluate and reflect. Evaluation and reflection are ongoing parts of development work. It's important to continuously assess what is working and what can be improved, and where reflection allows learning from experience and supports continuous improvements over time. Being able to reflect allows to identify problems, learn from experiences, and supports ongoing growth within organizations and companies continuously. As I was reading through this chapter, I was linking this development work to a scenario myself, linking it to AI within education. These principles can also be applied to modern challenges within education, such as AI. Key things like practical use, such as applying guidelines to real classroom AI use. Aspects such as theory-informed knowledge use the principles of fairness and validity in assessments to share AI policies. Collaboration within departments and within organizations, getting feedback from teachers and students on how to use AI properly and appropriately in the classroom. Ethical focuses and discussing plagiarism, being open and using AI in a responsible way within the classroom. Active development, using pilot guidelines in classes and make changes based on what you learn from different pilot programs. And finally, reflection and evaluation, reflecting on what worked, reviewing the effectiveness of different aspects of pilot programs, improving different pilot programs and maybe trialing again, and then continually improving over time. Stakeholders like teachers and students should be involved to ensure relevancy, and ethical issues like plagiarism and responsible use are especially important. Finally, testing and reflecting on guidelines helps improve them over time, making development work a strong framework for addressing AI in education.
Building on what Aaron presented, I'd like to speak about the collaborative ideation. This is interesting for my thesis because I want to create an association which is co-created actually by its members. So during the conference week, the idea will be to run some workshops together with Melissa, so we get as many inputs as possible. And the book was really interesting because it presented the principles, the process, the techniques, and the structure to run some of these workshops. So without creativity, there is no innovation. What we need is an open and a positive atmosphere, so trustful relationships. We also need to offer a change of perspectives, and quantity is more important than quality. So the more ideas we get, the better ideas we get, actually. We also have to keep in mind that it is not a linear process, but an iterative process. And it's really important to separate idea generation from idea evaluation. So first, really as many ideas as possible. And once we're done with that, then we can start selecting the best ideas and move forward with this. Then the book presents a clear process. First, to identify the problem, the opportunity. So here it would be which activities do we want to develop within the association. Then understanding the facts and the different perspectives. Here we could focus on the expectations and the needs of the members. Define the goals and the vision. What is actually the outcome of these activities. Then generating ideas, evaluating and selecting the solutions, and implementing the chosen ideas. But the part that was the most interesting was the techniques. So there were many of them. I only focused on the bullet points, and then there's the list below, which I will not speak about. So there was first the brainstorming and its alternatives, which are brainwriting, idea walking, and learning cafe. Brainwriting is the same as brainstorming, but it's in writing. But now the idea walking was interesting because a participant is asked to write an idea on a post-it and then to put it on a whiteboard. And then all participants are asked to walk through the room, look at all the ideas, and if an idea brings a new idea, then they take a post-it and next to this first idea, they add their idea. And then there's the learning cafe. So here it's rotating groups. So you have different tables and a group is working at a table, bringing some ideas and then letting the ideas on the table and moving on to another table. So here you see the result of the group's work and you can build on it. Another technique is the 8x8 method. I was adding the image here into the slides. So you have a main problem, what to do in Lapland, for example, and then you try to find 8 perspectives. So you could read, you could play games, you could go to ski, etc. And then you extract these 8 perspectives that you found, and for each perspective, you try to find again 8 ideas. So it's a really efficient way and a quick way to find many ideas. Then there's the 6 thinking hats. So here you really focus more on the different perspectives. So the 6 hats, they are the white hat, focusing on facts, the red hat, focusing on feelings, the black hat, focusing on risks, the yellow hat, focusing on benefits, the green hat, focusing on creativity, and the blue hat, focusing on facilitation. So what I like about this one is that you make sure that all perspectives are heard. Then there's the Osborne's checklist, which is famous because many products were actually created thanks to that. For example, the Post-it. And here the idea is to think outside of the box, So you take your product or your service, and then you go through a long list of questions asking you, can you adapt it, can you modify it, can you combine it, can you reverse it, etc. And then there's the 3 plus and minus technique. So when you bring an idea, you have to think of 3 advantages and 3 disadvantages of this technique. Finally, the structure. There's the business model canvas that we worked with in the financial management course that I'm planning to use for the thesis. There's also a process analysis and blueprinting. So here you think of your process, you try to divide it into different steps, and then you try to think of the different stakeholders, their roles, and to identify the problems which may occur. Then you have the benchmarking, so learning from other organizations. This is also something that I plan to use. And then the gap analysis, so self-qual, which is really interesting because it measures service quality. So you have 22 item sets of questions. The first set of questions you ask to the user before becoming a user, actually, so before using your service. Then the user is using your service, and then you ask the second set of questions. So you can easily identify the gap between the expectations and the reality of the use. So yeah, all in all, that was really interesting. It brought me many ideas for the organization of the workshops together with Melissa. I think something we could do is to have 4 topics, 1 topic at each table, and then let's say 4 groups, and each group would have a technique. So with, let's say, group A could be the one working with the 6 hats, and yeah, group B with another technique, and group A would start at table 1 and then go on to table 2, 3, 4, and yeah, the same process for all the groups. So we would make sure that each one has a chance to bring ideas for all the topics, but also that several techniques are used. So it might be it might help to bring more ideas. Thank you.